Jake Morrison walked through the long metal hallway of the space station. His black boots made soft sounds on the floor. The walls around him were made of some kind of blue crystal that glowed with its own light. He had never seen anything like it on Earth. The human ambassador carried an old leather briefcase in his right hand. Inside were papers and notes about his home planet. He was the first human to ever visit the Galactic Council station. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders. Jake was 45 years old with gray hair at his temples. His face showed lines from years of worry and hard work. Before becoming Earth's ambassador, he had been a Marine for 20 years. He fought in 3 wars and saw things that most people never would. The government picked him for this job because he was tough and never gave up. The space station was huge. It floated in empty space between 2 giant stars. 12 different alien races built it together over many years. Each section looked different because each race added their own style. Jake passed through areas with walls that curved like waves, and others with sharp angles that hurt to look at. Other beings walked past him in the hallway. Most were much taller than humans. Some had blue skin and long heads. Others looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. A few floated in the air inside metal suits filled with gas. None of them looked at Jake as they passed. They acted like he was not worth their time. Jake reached the main council chamber and stopped outside the huge doors. They were 30 feet, tall and covered in symbols from all 12 races. He took a deep breath and checked his watch. In 5 minutes, he would walk inside and ask for humanity to join the Galactic Council. The council had been around for over 10,000 years. The 12 races that made it up were old and powerful. They controlled most of the galaxy and made decisions about trade, war, and peace. Earth wanted to join so humans could explore space safely and learn from other races. But Jake knew it would not be easy. Humans had only learned to travel faster than light 50 years ago. Most alien races had been doing it for thousands of years. To them, humans were babies taking their first steps. The doors opened with a deep rumbling sound. Jake walked into the chamber and felt very small. The room was round and huge, bigger than any building on Earth. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. 12 seats were arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different type of alien. In the center was a single human-sized chair. It looked tiny compared to everything else. Jake walked to it and sat down. He placed his briefcase on the floor beside him and folded his hands in his lap. The alien delegates took their seats one by one. The Xanthari delegate had blue skin and a head twice as long as a human head. Jake knew this race could read minds and talk without speaking. Their leader was named Zethkar, and he ran the council meetings. The Vorthak delegate looked like a walking mountain of purple crystal. Its name was Crix, and it stood 12 feet tall. Light danced inside its body when it moved. Jake had read that the Vorthak were made of living rock and thought they were smarter than all other races. Other delegates filled the remaining seats. The ethereals floated in metal suits because they were made of gas. The depth lords looked like giant fish with arms and legs. The hive queen was an insect the size of a small car with too many eyes to count. Jake looked around at all of them and felt like a mouse in a room full of cats. But he kept his back straight and his face calm. Marines learned not to show fear even when they felt it. Zethkar's voice spoke inside Jake's head without using words. The feeling was strange and made Jake's teeth hurt. We gather today to hear the request of the human race for membership in our council. Several delegates made sounds that Jake thought might be laughter. The Vorthak's crystal body rang like a bell. The ethereal's metal suit let out a hissing noise. The depth lord slapped its tail on the floor. Jake felt his face get hot, but he did not move. He had expected this. Every report about the council said they thought humans were too young and stupid to join. But Earth's leaders told him to try anyway. Crix spoke in a voice like breaking glass. This race has been in space for only 50 years. They still fight wars on their own planet. They pollute their air and water. They cannot even agree on simple things like trade or borders. What makes them think they belong here with us? More laughter came from around the room. Jake's hands made fists in his lap, but he kept his face blank. He would let them talk first and then have his say. The Hive Queen clicked her teeth together. Humans live for less than 100 years. How can such short-lived creatures understand the long view needed for galactic peace? They make decisions based on fear and anger instead of logic and wisdom. One by one, the delegates listed human failures. They talked about Earth's wars, its pollution, its divided governments. They showed pictures of human cities with poor people living in the streets. They played recordings of human leaders saying angry things about other countries. Jake watched and listened and took notes in a small notebook. He wrote down every insult and every criticism. The delegates seemed surprised that he was not defending his people. Some looked confused when he nodded along with their points. This went on for 3 hours. Jake's back was sore from sitting still, but he did not move. Finally, Zethkar spoke to him directly. "Human Morrison, you have heard our concerns about your race. Perhaps it would be wise for humanity to spend a few more centuries developing before asking to join us again. Surely you can see that this is the logical choice." The chamber became quiet. All eyes turned to Jake. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He stood up slowly and picked up his briefcase. Time to show them what humans were really made of. Jake Morrison opened his briefcase and pulled out his notebook. The alien delegates watched him with what looked like amusement. They thought he was about to give up and go home like a beaten dog. They were wrong. "Honored delegates," Jake said, in a clear voice. "You have made many good points about humanity's problems. I will not argue with most of your facts. Humans do fight wars. We do live short lives. Our technology is far behind yours. But I think you have missed something important." Crix, the crystal delegate, made a sound like wind chimes. "And what might that be, little human?" Jake turned to face the Vorthak directly. 6 months ago, your sensors picked up trouble at the mining colony on Kepler 442b. The Devourers attacked. You know what those things are. Extragalactic monsters that eat everything in their path. Even your advanced races run away when they show up. The chamber grew quiet. The Kepler incident was not public knowledge. Jake saw several delegates look, surprised that he knew about it. Your crystal ships fled the moment the Devourers arrived, Jake continued. The Zenthari telepaths could not read the creatures' alien minds. The Ethereals found that their energy weapons had no effect on the monsters' adaptive armor. Every advanced race with ships in that system ran for safety. He flipped a page in his notebook. But Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster and her Marines did not run. They had those crude projectile weapons you laughed at. They had no fancy energy, shields, or telepathic powers. What they had was something you seem to have forgotten. They had the will to fight when fighting meant certain death. The Depth Lord delegate shifted in his water-filled seat. "Surely you exaggerate. No force could stand against the Devourers." Amy Foster and 73 Marines held the line for 18 hours, Jake said. They bought time for 12,000 colonists to evacuate. People from 7 different races, including some of yours. Every single Marine died in that fight. But every single civilian lived. The chamber was completely silent now. Jake could hear the hum of the station's power systems and the sound of his own breathing. "You want another example?" Jake asked. He turned to face the ethereal delegate. "Last year, a plague hit the Depth Lord homeworld. Your advanced species formed committees to study the problem. You held meetings to discuss the meetings. You wrote reports about the reports. The gaseous being in the metal suit made an angry, hissing sound. We followed proper procedure. Such decisions cannot be rushed. While you followed procedure, 3 billion Depth Lords were dying," Jake said. His voice got harder. Dr. Lisa Parker did not wait for committees. She ignored the quarantine orders and took her team into the plague zones. For 6 months, they worked with almost no sleep. They lived in contaminated areas. They risked their own lives every day. Jake looked around the room at each delegate. Dr. Parker and her team of primitive humans developed a cure that saved those 3 billion lives. How many lives did your committees save while they were following proper procedure? The Hive Queen's many eyes blinked in sequence. These are isolated incidents. They prove nothing about human nature as a whole. Really? Jake asked. He flipped through several pages of his notebook. Last month, the cargo ship Distant Star had engine failure in the dead zone. No race goes there because of the radiation storms. The ship was carrying medical supplies to the outer rim colonies. He found the page he wanted. Captain Ben Carter and his crew knew they would probably die if they went into the dead zone. The radiation would cook them slowly. But those medical supplies were needed to stop an outbreak on Rim Station, so they went anyway. Jake's voice filled the huge chamber. Carter and his crew flew through radiation storms that would kill most aliens in minutes. They delivered those supplies and saved 40,000 lives. Captain Carter spent 2 months in the hospital afterward. Half his crew will never fully recover. But the mission was completed. The crystal delegate Crix resonated with a low tone. You speak of sacrifice as if it were a virtue. Is it not simply poor planning and emotional thinking? Is it? Jake asked. He closed his notebook and walked closer to the center of the circle. How long has it been since any of your races faced real danger? When did any of you last have to choose between your own safety and doing what was right? The question hung in the air like smoke. Jake could see the delegates looking at each other with uncertainty. The Zenthari have ruled for 8,000 years, Jake continued. The Vorthak have been a galactic power for 12,000 years. You have all achieved great things. You have built this amazing station. You have created technologies that seem like magic to us. He spread his arms wide. But when did any of you last have to fight for your survival? When did any of you last face a problem that could not be solved with superior technology or careful planning? The ethereal delegate spoke in a voice like wind through metal. We have maintained galactic peace for millennia. Our wisdom has prevented countless wars. Through superior force and advanced technology, Jake replied, which works great until you face something that does not care about your superiority, something that cannot be reasoned with or intimidated. Jake walked back toward his chair, but did not sit down. You call humans primitive and emotional. You say we are too violent and unstable. Maybe you are right, but there is another way to look at it. He opened his notebook again. Humans survived ice ages that should have killed us. We lived through plagues that wiped out most other life on our planet. We survived meteor impacts and volcanic eruptions and predators that were bigger and stronger than us. The room was so quiet that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Every alien eye, sensor, and appendage was focused on him. We survived because we never learned when to quit, Jake said. We never learned that some fights are not worth having. We never learned to run away when the odds were against us. He looked directly at Zethkar, the council leader. Your races have become so advanced that you have forgotten how to be dangerous. You have lived in comfort for so long that you do not remember what it feels like to have your back against the wall. Jake's voice dropped to almost a whisper, forcing the entire chamber to strain to hear him. Someday, something will come that your technology cannot stop, something that your telepathy cannot understand, something that your energy weapons cannot destroy. And when that day comes, you will need someone crazy enough to stand in its way. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Jake could see doubt creeping into the alien faces around him. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council was being forced to question their own superiority. That is what humanity offers, Jake said finally. When the universe throws something impossible at you, we are the species that refuses to accept defeat. We are the ones who volunteer for the missions that everyone else thinks are hopeless. Sat back down in his small chair and waited for their response. The silence in the council chamber felt heavy and thick. Jake Morrison sat in his chair and watched the alien delegates process what he had just told them. Some looked confused. Others appeared angry. A few seemed to be thinking hard about his words. Zethkar, the Zenthari leader, spoke first. His telepathic voice in Jake's head sounded less certain than before. Your words are interesting, Ambassador Morrison, but surely you overstate humanity's unique qualities. Many races have shown courage in the face of danger. Jake nodded and opened his notebook to a new page. That may be true, but when was the last time any of your races showed that courage? Not 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. When was the last time? He stood up and walked to the center of the circle again. I have been studying your history since Earth made contact with the galaxy. The Zenthari were once great, warriors who fought the Void Spawn in the early days. The Vorthak used to sacrifice themselves to save their crystal cities from stellar storms. Jake turned to look at each delegate as he spoke. The ethereals once gave up their physical forms to stop a plague that was killing other races. Every species in this room has stories of heroism and sacrifice from their past. The Hive Queen clicked her mandibles together. Our ancestors were indeed brave. We honor their memory. But where is that bravery now? Jake asked. You honor the memory of courage instead of practicing it. You have become so comfortable and safe that you have forgotten how to take risks. The crystal delegate Crix made a sound like grinding stone. Safety and comfort are the rewards of advancement. Why should we risk what we have built? Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Because the universe does not care about what you have built. It does not respect your advancement or your comfort. Sooner or later, it will test you again. And when that happens, you need to be ready. He pulled a single sheet of paper from his notebook and held it up. 3 days ago, your long-range sensors detected something in the outer rim, something big and artificial, moving toward the galactic core at impossible speeds. The reaction was immediate. Every delegate sat up straighter or made sounds of surprise. The ethereal's metal suit hissed with escaping gas. The Depth Lord's tail slapped the floor hard enough to shake Jake's chair. How do you know about that? Zethkar demanded. That information is classified at the highest levels. Earth has good intelligence networks, Jake said calmly. We may be primitive, but we are not stupid. We know that this object will reach inhabited systems in about 18 months. We also know that every computer model shows the same result. He let that sink in before continuing. Total destruction of all life in its path. Complete sterilization of every planet and space station it encounters. Your own scientists estimate it could wipe out half the galaxy before it can be stopped. The chamber erupted in worried voices. Delegates spoke to each other in their own languages. Some demanded to know how humans had accessed classified information. Others wanted to know what Earth planned to do about the threat. Jake waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. Your response to this threat has been very predictable. You formed a committee to study the object. Then you formed another committee to oversee the first committee. You scheduled meetings to discuss the findings of the meetings. His voice turned sharp. Very logical, very careful, very thorough, and completely useless. The Vorthak delegates' crystal body flashed with angry light. Proper procedure must be followed. Rash action could make the situation worse. Rash action? Jake repeated. The object will be here in 18 months. How much procedure do you need? How many committees and meetings and reports will it take before you actually do something? He folded the paper and put it back in his notebook. While you are following proper procedure, Admiral Connor Blake is already assembling a strike force. Every human ship that can mount a weapon is being prepared for battle. The ethereal delegate spoke in a voice like steam escaping. Your ships are no match for such a threat. Your weapons are primitive. It would be suicide. Probably, Jake agreed. Admiral Blake knows that. His captains know that. Every human volunteer knows that. They are going anyway because someone has to try. Jake walked back toward his chair but stopped halfway. That is the difference between humans and the rest of you. When faced with impossible odds, you form committees. We form battle lines. The Hive Queen's many eyes focused on him. And if humanity fails? If your brave admiral and his ships are destroyed? Then we fail fighting instead of dying in committee meetings, Jake said. At least the next species to evolve will know that someone tried everything possible. He sat down and looked around at the 12 delegates. But maybe we will not fail. Maybe our crude weapons and rash thinking will find a way to stop this thing. Maybe being too stupid to know when we are beaten will be exactly what the galaxy needs. Zethkar's telepathic voice was quieter now. You suggest that your inexperience is an advantage? I suggest that your experience has made you careful to the point of paralysis, Jake replied. You have ruled for so long that you have forgotten how to take desperate measures. You have been safe for so many centuries that you do not remember how to be dangerous. Jake opened his briefcase and pulled out another document. I have here a list of every major galactic threat in the last 5,000 years. The Void Spawn invasion, the Crystal Plague, the Reality Storm, the Dark Star incident. He held up the paper. In every case, the threat was stopped by young races taking desperate actions that the older races thought were impossible or foolish. Every single time, it was the primitive species that saved the galaxy, while the advanced ones held meetings. The chamber had grown completely silent again. Jake could see the delegates thinking about what he had said. Some looked uncomfortable. Others appeared to be reconsidering their assumptions. The pattern is clear, Jake continued. As races become more advanced, they become more cautious. As they become more cautious, they become less effective at dealing with real crises. Comfort breeds weakness. He stood up one final time. Humanity offers the Galactic Council something you have lost. We offer the willingness to charge into the unknown. We offer the courage to attempt the impossible. We offer the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Jake looked directly at each delegate as he spoke his next words. You can reject our application and face the coming threat with committees and procedures. Or you can accept us and let humans do what we do best. Fight the fights that everyone else thinks cannot be won. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not the silence of mockery or dismissal. It was the silence of beings who were being forced to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. Finally, Zethkar spoke. The Council will need time to consider your words, Ambassador Morrison. Jake nodded and closed his briefcase. Time is something the galaxy does not have much of, but I will wait for your decision. As he walked toward the exit, Jake could hear the delegates beginning to argue among themselves. Some voices sounded angry. Others sounded worried. A few sounded almost hopeful. He had said what he came to say. Now it was up to them to decide if the galaxy was ready to remember how to be brave. Jake Morrison did not get far before Zethkar's telepathic voice stopped him. Ambassador, please return to the chamber. The Council wishes to hear more about this object approaching from the outer rim. Jake turned around and walked back to his seat. The atmosphere in the room had changed completely. The mocking laughter was gone. Instead, he saw worry and fear on the alien faces around him. How much does Earth know about this threat? Asked Crix, the crystal delegate. The Vorthax's body was pulsing with nervous light. Jake opened his briefcase again and pulled out a thick folder. More than you might expect. Earth may be new to space travel, but we are very good at gathering information and preparing for war. He spread several photographs on the floor where all the delegates could see them. The images showed a massive dark object moving through space. It was bigger than most moons and covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at. Our deep space telescopes have been tracking this thing for 2 months, Jake said. We call it the Harvester because of what our computer models predict. It will do to inhabited worlds. The ethereal delegate leaned forward in its metal suit. Your models may be incorrect. Perhaps it is simply a very large ship from an unknown race. That is what we hoped at first, Jake replied. But look at this. He pointed to one of the photographs. These energy readings show it consuming everything in its path. Asteroids, gas clouds, even light itself disappears when it gets close. The Hive Queen's mandibles clicked rapidly. How can such a thing exist? It violates the basic laws of physics. So did faster-than-light travel until someone figured out how to do it, Jake said. The universe is full of things we do not understand yet. This is just one more. He pulled out another set of papers. But here is what really worries our scientists. The object is not just moving toward the galactic core, it is accelerating. It started at about 10% of light speed. Now it is moving at nearly 30% and still getting faster. The Kari chamber filled with worried voices as delegates discussed this information in their own languages. Jake waited for them to settle down before continuing. At its current rate of acceleration, the Harvester will reach the first inhabited systems in 16 months, not 18, and by the time it gets there, it will be moving so fast that conventional weapons will be useless. Zethkar's telepathic voice carried new urgency. What does Earth propose to do about this threat? Jake smiled grimly. Admiral Blake has a plan. It is dangerous and probably impossible, but it is better than forming more committees. He stood up and walked to the center of the circle. The Admiral believes the only way to stop the Harvester is to hit it while it is still accelerating, before it reaches full speed, before it gets to the inhabited worlds. That would require sending ships into the deep dark, said the Depth Lord delegate. No race has ever survived long in that region of space. Human ships have better radiation shielding than most, Jake replied. We built them that way because Earth is a dangerous planet with a lot of cosmic radiation. What kills other races in hours might only kill us in days. The Vorthak delegate's crystal body rang like a struck bell. Days is still not enough time to reach the object and return. Admiral Blake is not planning to return, Jake said quietly. This is a one-way mission. The human volunteers know they will not be coming home. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake could see the shock on every alien face. The idea of deliberately sacrificing lives for the greater good seemed to horrify them. Surely there must be another way, said the ethereal. Some solution that does not require such terrible losses. Jake shook his head. Your own computer models show the same result as ours. Nothing else will work. The object is too big, too fast, and too well protected. The only chance is to hit it before it reaches full power. He pulled out one final document and held it up. Admiral Blake has requested permission to arm his ships with experimental weapons, devices that Earth has been developing in secret for situations exactly like this. The Hive Queen leaned forward. What kind of weapons? The kind that use principles your races consider too dangerous to develop, Jake said. Weapons that manipulate space and time itself. Weapons that could destroy the ships using them along with their targets. Crix's crystal body flashed with alarm. Such weapons are forbidden by galactic law. They are too unstable and destructive. Galactic law assumes normal circumstances, Jake replied. These are not normal circumstances. When the choice is between breaking some laws or watching the galaxy die, humans choose to break the laws. Jake sat back down and looked around the room. That is another difference between humans and the rest of you. You have so many rules and procedures that you cannot act when action is needed. We make up the rules as we go. Zethkar's mental voice was troubled. But if these weapons are as dangerous as you suggest, they could cause more harm than the Harvester itself. They could, Jake agreed. But doing nothing will definitely cause more harm. At least this way we have a chance. The ethereal delegate made a sound like escaping steam. You ask us to support a plan that could destroy entire star systems. I ask you to support the only plan that might save the galaxy, Jake corrected. Admiral Blake needs 3 things from the Galactic Council. Long-range sensor data about the object's exact position, navigational charts for the deep dark region, and permission to use the experimental weapons without interference. He closed his folder and put it back in his briefcase. Earth is going to try this mission whether the Council helps or not, but our chances of success would be much better with your support. The chamber erupted in discussion again. Delegates argued with each other in multiple languages. Some wanted to help. Others thought the plan was too risky. A few suggested forming yet another committee to study the proposal. Jake listened to the chaos and shook his head. Even facing the end of everything they had built, some of them still wanted to hold meetings and follow procedures. Finally, Zethkar called for silence. Ambassador Morrison, you present us with an impossible choice. Support a plan that could destroy us or do nothing and definitely be destroyed. Welcome to the kind of choices humans face every day, Jake said. The difference is that we make a choice instead of talking about it until it is too late. The Zenthari leader's telepathic voice was heavy with worry. If we support this mission and it fails, billions will die. If we do not support this mission, trillions will die, Jake replied. Mathematics is simple even for primitive humans. He stood up and walked toward the exit again. The Council has until tomorrow to decide. After that, Admiral Blake launches his mission with or without your help. Earth will not wait for the perfect solution that will never come. As Jake reached the chamber doors, Crix called out to him. Human Morrison, why does your species always choose the most difficult path? Jake stopped and turned back to face the crystal being. Because the difficult path is usually the only one that leads anywhere. Worth going. He left the chamber with the sound of 12 alien voices arguing about the fate of the galaxy. Outside in the corridor, Jake allowed himself a small smile. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council was being forced to make a real decision under pressure. He hoped they would choose correctly. The galaxy's survival might depend on it. Jake Morrison spent the night in his small quarters aboard the Council station. He did not sleep much. Through the window, he could see the two giant stars that provided light for the station. They reminded him of Earth's sun and made him wonder if he would ever see home again. At dawn, station time, a message arrived asking him to return to the council chamber. Jake dressed in his best uniform and picked up his briefcase. Whatever the council had decided, he would face it with dignity. The chamber looked different when he entered. The delegates sat straighter in their seats. Their faces showed determination instead of the casual arrogance he had seen before. Something had changed during their long night of debate. Zethkar spoke as soon as Jake sat down. Ambassador Morrison, the Council has reached a decision regarding your request for membership and your warning about the approaching threat. Jake nodded, but said nothing. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best response was to listen. First, regarding the object you call the Harvester, the Zenthari leader continued. Our scientists worked through the night to verify your data. Unfortunately, your information appears to be accurate. The threat is real and immediate. The crystal delegate Crix resonated with a low tone. Our computer models confirm that conventional weapons will be ineffective against this object. More disturbing, our projections show it will reach inhabited space in 15 months, not 16. Jake felt his stomach drop. Even his worst estimates had been too optimistic. Second, Zethkar continued, regarding Admiral Blake's proposed mission. The Council has analyzed the plan and concluded that while extremely dangerous, it represents the only viable option for stopping the Harvester. The ethereal delegate spoke in its wind-like voice. We have decided to provide full support for the mission. Long-range sensor data, navigational charts, and even some of our advanced technology will be made available to the human fleet. Jake tried not to show his surprise. He had expected the Council to reject the plan or demand changes that would make it impossible. But there is a condition, added the Hive Queen. The Council insists on sending ships and crews from our own races to join the mission. This threat endangers all life in the galaxy. We should all share the risk of stopping it. Now Jake was truly shocked. These ancient, comfortable races were volunteering to risk their lives alongside humans. It was the last thing he had expected. That is very generous, Jake said carefully. But Admiral Blake's plan requires ships that can survive in the deep dark long enough to reach the target. Most alien vessels are not built for that kind of punishment. Crix's crystal body pulsed with light. We are aware of the limitations, but each race has technologies that could improve the mission's chances of success. Zenthari telepaths could maintain communication across impossible distances. Vorthak crystal armor could protect against certain types of radiation. Ethereal energy manipulation might enhance your experimental weapons. Jake realized what was happening. The Council was not just supporting the mission. They were making it their own. These beings who had mocked humanity for being primitive were now asking to learn from human courage. There is more, said Zethkar. The Council has also reached a decision regarding Earth's application for membership. Here it comes, Jake thought. They would probably offer some kind of associate status or probationary membership, something that sounded good but meant nothing. The Zenthari leader stood up from his seat. Around the chamber, the other delegates did the same. Jake found himself looking up at 12 towering alien figures, all focused on him. The motion to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Council passes by unanimous vote, Zethkar announced. Furthermore, we hereby appoint Earth as the Council's military coordinator for the duration of the current crisis. Jake's mouth fell open. Full membership was more than he had dared hope for. But military coordinator meant Earth would be in charge of the galaxy's defense. It was an incredible responsibility. I do not understand, Jake said when he found his voice. Yesterday you thought humans were too primitive to join the Council. Now you want us to lead it? The Depth Lord delegate slapped his tail against his water tank. Yesterday we thought our advanced civilization made us superior. Today we learned that sometimes being advanced means being weak. The Ethereal's metal suit hissed as it spoke. You showed us that we have forgotten how to take necessary risks. We have become so afraid of losing what we have built that we cannot protect it when real threats arise. Crix's crystal body rang like a bell. Your species may be young and crude, but you remember something we have lost. You remember how to fight when fighting is the only option. Jake stood up slowly, still trying to process what was happening. The Council is placing the defense of the galaxy in the hands of a species you called primitive yesterday, because primitives still know how to survive, said the Hive Queen. We have lived in safety for so long that we have forgotten the skills that kept our ancestors alive. You can teach us to remember. Zethkar's telepathic voice carried new respect. Admiral Blake will have full Council authority to coordinate the defense mission. Every race will contribute ships, technology, and personnel under human command. Jake felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Earth had gone from being rejected applicants to leading the galaxy in the space of one day. What about after the crisis? Jake asked. Assuming we survive, what happens to this new arrangement? That will depend on how well humanity handles the responsibility, Zethkar replied. If your species proves capable of leadership under pressure, perhaps it is time for younger voices to guide galactic policy. The chamber filled with a sound Jake had never expected to hear. The 12 delegates were applauding, not with mockery or condescension, but with genuine respect and hope. As Jake walked from the chamber, his mind raced with everything that had to be done. Admiral Blake needed to be contacted immediately. Ships had to be prepared and crews assembled. Technology had to be shared and integrated. The fate of trillions of lives depended on getting everything right. But for the first time since arriving at the station, Jake felt confident about the future. Humanity had been given a chance to prove itself on the biggest stage possible. Win or lose, they would show the galaxy what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. The Council had mocked humanity for being primitive, but in the end, they had voted for humanity's greatest strength, the absolute refusal to accept the impossible as inevitable. 18 months later, when Admiral Blake's fleet engaged the Harvester in a battle that defied every law of physics and probability, the rest of the galaxy watched in amazement. Humans and aliens fought side by side, using technology that should have destroyed them to stop a threat that should have been unstoppable. The Harvester was destroyed. The galaxy was saved, and the Galactic Council never mocked humanity again. Instead, they learned from humanity. They remembered how to be brave, how to take necessary risks, and how to fight for something greater than themselves. Under human leadership, the galaxy became stronger, more united, and better prepared for whatever challenges the universe might throw at them next. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero. But more than that, he returned as the man who had changed everything. With nothing but words and determination, he had transformed humanity from galactic outcasts to galactic leaders. The Council had mocked humanity. One diplomat's words had changed everything.